The Haze Hour is sponsored by Janty, pioneers in e-cigs.
Well, hello. 'Tis I, Leclerc, Dave Dawn. You will note, to either side, not a Keith in sight. I haven't even got him on Skype from Spain, for the simple reason that he's got no way of getting on Skype from Spain. He's not here. He's in foreign climes, sunning himself, drinking copious quantities of beer, and probably not even watching the show. How sad is that? Am I sad? Nah, not really. Got another guest on the show tonight in video, and it's been ages since we've worked together, and I look forward to the next time that we do. It's going to be, as I said last night, we're going to be meshing about. See what I did there? Maybe I'd better just play the titles and wig out. All of you that know, let's get the devil's fingers up. Get your heads banging. I can play the titles loud tonight because Keith's not here. Welcome to the Haze Hour. And here we are. Now, before I go too much further into the show, I want to say a big thank you to the guys on Vape Team for having me on their show last night. I don't think I've been on video live into the States on anybody else's show, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. What a completely wonderful set of blokes they are, even if I am slightly jealous of the amount of gear that they've got. But if you missed it, it's up there on YouTube. There'll be links all over the place. Just Google Vape Team and it'll tell you where to go. It's a good show. They're a good set of lads. I highly recommend that you go and watch them. And anybody that knows me well knows I very rarely recommend anything at all. But yes, it was good. Enjoyed it. I was going to take the mickey out of Dimitri, but just because he can't do an English accent, actually I can't do his either. I can't speak that quickly and still be understood. Actually, I can't speak at any speed and still be understood. But that's a function of where I'm from. It's not my fault. I blame me dragons up. Have you noticed though how, changing the subject round to e-cigs, as you do, isn't that right, Keith? Yeah. No. Yeah, have you noticed how around all the forums lately, in what you might call the hobbyist community, because that's basically what it is, I suppose, everybody's latching on to mesh-wicked Genesis style atomizers. I noted, for instance, there's a group buy on, I thought they were getting cookers. They're called Argers. They've done a group buy over there. 86 they've bought in. And this is, I can't remember the name of the company now. I went and had a quick look and it looks very interesting. MG Jones and myself were having a look at them last night in cahoots with one or two other people in the Hangout on Google+. I'm not a geek. Uber geek, whatever. But everybody seems to be getting into them. Now, on the team, the VTTV team, we have a female member who is heavily into Genesis style atties. And when I say heavily into Genesis style atties, you'll have heard us talking about her before. This is the girl, and I call her a girl because she's young at heart, that can wind a coil on a line in under 10 seconds, blindfold, with the wind against her, going downhill in a rickshaw. We reckon anyway. We think she can. Sav reckons she can. And yeah, she's pretty good at it. So she's not only got the line low, she appears to have just about every other one I've ever heard of or ever seen. She's got, so I asked her if she would do something and record it so that we could kind of share the love, as it were. And because we just don't see it on screen often enough. So she agreed. And there's 11 minutes and 38 seconds of one of my favourite people about to come up now with, it has to be said, a lot of things I've been lusting after. And you can take that anywhere you like.
Hello, it's Kat here. I've been given a bit of a reputation lately as being the wicked witch, that I'm supposed to be quite good at wicking these rebuildables. Well, I'm here to tell you I'm not. I'm not that great at them, I can assure you. I started with this, and excuse the noise, that's the bread maker. You know, I multitask me, you know. This is the line, and this was my first, and still my favourite. And the line is easy. It's very easy to wick, hence I can do this one in the dark. Why is it easy? That is why. Can you see the two silver spokes sticking up? Well, that's all you have to put your coil around your wire, so it's quite simple. And that's where I've got the reputation. Where it comes to the rebuildables that have got screws, etc., trust me, I'm not that good. Do I like them? Love them. Why do I love them? Flavour. Simple as. Flavour. They give throated, but they give flavour. Gorgeous. And I tried one of these, which is the Cyclone 2, and that's it, on a lava tube at 3.7. They don't need high. This one works in a slightly different way, as the tank is on the top and the juice runs down onto the coil. Now the result you get with that system is you will get condensation inside, but perfectly good system. Cooler vape, cooler. But with this, one of the things you would have heard people saying, it's important to have the air hole in a line with the wick, and it is quite important, and you aren't going to get that. It's very hard to do with a Cyclone, and it whistles a bit. Then, like so many out there, I tried this, which is the Did clone, and I've got it here on a Darwin. perfectly acceptable vape. Again, important to get that air hole in the right place. I had a devil of a job. I had to get in touch with Dave and say, I cannot make these work. None of them. And the reason why I couldn't make them work, I ran out of my 0.2 Canthal and I had 1.8. And because I was so used to 2, could I make any of them work at 1.8? No, I couldn't. So you see, if you're having these problems, it doesn't mean to say you shouldn't be having them. It doesn't mean to say that none of the rest of us do. Because we do. I can assure you, we do. I found a bit of 0.2. Hence they're working. This last one isn't mine, I've borrowed it. That is the ever wonderful Hellfire. This is a Hellfire Mega. And it does. Hellfire is designed for a U-wick. If you look at that, you'll see I've only got 1 wick in. Now I did try it with 2 wicks and it worked. Wow, flavour was fabulous, but I was going through a whole tank of juice in a very short time. And I had a look at the review that that Scott did over the Hellfire Mini, and what he said was he didn't find the difference between a U and a single big enough, or enough of a difference, to make it worth the extra faff. And I think it's a case of not so much extra faff, is the U-wick requires an extra practice session. I have heard that the finer wicks make it easier to turn those U-shaped wicks, and I certainly will give it a go and see if I can use the U-wick. But at the moment I'm finding blooming great. Flavour on that is superb. So those of you that are lucky enough to have one, I envy you. But the little did clone here, I'm not sitting here reviewing any of these items. That's not what this is about. It's about rebuildables and how they can be a pain and how they can be a faff, but it's all down to practice. Practice and more practice, and when you've had enough, practice a bit more. Put it to one side. Don't have it as the only thing you're vaping on. Put it to one side until you're in the mood again to play and practice. That's why I can do this one in the dark. It was the only one I had. I haven't got the best of vision. I haven't got the best dexterity. But I played around and played around until I thought, I've got it. It's like riding a bike. Now I don't have it set so that I get tons of vapour. Why not? Because I want the vapour on the inside of me, and I want the flavour on the inside of me, not on the outside. But this is so easy to change everything because you just move those little silver whatever you call them, doofers, doodars, thingamajigs, spindles. I don't know, you just move there. And Bob's your uncle. It's sorted. Great little piece of kit. But it doesn't hold a lot. So, that's just me putting you right that I'm not the world's best at coiling these things and wicking them and what have you. I ain't. I've got a lot of practicing to do. So join me out there. Practice. Whether it be on an inexpensive little clone. See how you get on before buying the real thing. Why not? Give them a go. Have fun. Ta-ra!
That's got to be the biggest blowtorch I've seen anybody using to make a wick. That's the one thing you can say about Chris. She never does things small. It's right what she says though, you know. I mean, I was reading chat through that, and aside, and I've got to say, Jeff, it wasn't a Sibian. Was it, Chris?
No, it wasn't.
There you go. Because she's listening as well, you see. I've got her here. You just cannot see her. She's over there somewhere. Yeah, I mean, have you got any more since that little lad got filmed?
No more. But at the moment, the flavour of the week has to be this little dead clone. You know, when one of them suddenly decides it's going to work its little socks off and be brilliant.
Yes.
It's being absolutely spot on. However, clones being clones and being made in China, dear God, they now suffer from some queer problems.
Yes.
For example, you've got one of these, haven't you, Dave?
I have, yes. I'll see if I can reach it and then I can show it while we're talking.
Does your top keep falling off, despite the fact you screw it on?
No. I've spent some time with this, and I've found that if you don't catch the threads, it'll fall off, and if you over tighten it, it goes past the threads and falls off. But if you get it just right, it stays where it's supposed to be. I've no idea whether, do you know, I've got about 3 inches to work with here. But it can be a bit finicky about where the threads go, and now I've got it so tightly threaded. There you go. If you miss it, you just have to miss it by a little bit. You think you've got it threaded, and then you discover you haven't. But yeah, I mean, aside from that, you know, it's not a bad little piece of kit. It does the job quite nicely. And I know someone, I forget who, was asking in chat which was the cheapest one. I think that's probably around about the lowest cost one that's available from a vendor in the UK at the minute in terms of a Genesis style. I know this Arga is due to come through, and I think that might be a little cheaper. It's still going to be somewhere between £18 and £22, I think. And I think this one retails around about £25 mark in most places. But you know, it's not an awful lot of money in the scheme of things to have a try with these things and have a bit of practice. I wouldn't say though that they're the best place to start, but they're the cheapest place to start. Is that fair?
That's very fair, because at the sort of cost, you know, that you are outlaying, it's something to practice on. You know, and if you do decide that it's not for you for whatever reason, you haven't lost an awful lot of money. But I can imagine with most of these devices that you're having to go on a list God, that word needs to be banned. You have to go on a list. And 6 months later, somebody asks you to pay for something you can't even remember ordering.
Exactly.
You know?
What? Yes, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. I know you've come off a couple of lists because you were there for 8 or 9 months.
Yeah, and I just found myself the last time put my name on a list because there was still a space open and I didn't even know what I was listing for.
I was going to say, I remember you saying, she said, you were sitting in Skype and she came in one night and she says, I've joined a list. I says, what for? She says, I've got no idea. The daft part about it was there was another person in the same chat went, oh, I'm joining, and off they went. It's a great...
That's so addictive.
Well, I think only if you've joined one. We've actually got some... I can't believe I'm turning the tables on you here. We've got some comments coming in from chat. Hello, I'm Sav. It's from Put, who's in Ireland. Put.
Yes.
So he says, for a U-wick, cut the mesh on a diagonal and don't quench it between flaming, is what he says.
Been there, done that, got the t-shirt, tried it.
Well, you know what's going to happen now, don't you? Wait until I've got a bit of video to play in after the adverts, which is me looking at this new piece of kit. The piece of kit that's just sliding into shot there now. I know a few people have recognised it, and you can see where it's from because it says down at the bottom. And after you've seen that, you will understand why I'm saying I'm going to give this diagonal cut and don't quench between flaming a go, but I'm not convinced of any success. It's very much a learning curve. But I suppose I ought to take the first bunch of adverts right about now. And when we come back, we will actually be taking a look at the Cobra. And I'll tell you the story. It's an 18-minute video, so if you need to make a cup of coffee or have a wee or anything else, don't do it now. Hang on till the end of the show, because our sponsors would appreciate your business.
The Haze Hour is brought to you by Janty, pioneers in electronic smoking.
iVapor and iVapor Elixir, based in Yorkshire, for your e-cig needs. That's ivapor.co.uk and ivapor-elixir.co.uk. iVapor and ivapor-elixir.co.uk, proud sponsors of vaportrails.tv.
And now back to the Haze Hour, sponsored by Janty.
Do you know, I was having a conversation with Chris there in the background and completely forgot to watch what I was doing. When Keith's not here, I'm like a man out. It's true enough to say. Anyway, I'll give you the backstory to this. At the knees up a couple of weeks back, you'll remember. Oh, and a little bit of news on that, by the way. The original venue, whose name I have now erased from my memory, the Rattler, on, what do you call that thing that we use, TripAdvisor, has dropped from position 38 in South Shields down to position 47. And the place to which we decanted, the Sundial, a name which will never escape my memory, has risen from position 48 to position 36. Oh dear, how sad. Never mind, eh? Anyway, I just thought I would share that with you. It just goes to show, we have the power. Power to the people. Power to the e-cig using people, indeed. Anyway, right, backstory on this one. And let's put that shot up, because this here is what I'm talking about. The Cobra. Now, while I was at the mini-meet, Daz grabbed hold of me. Daz at Safe e-cigs, who is a cracking lad, it has to be said, and I'll put it in my mitt now. He said, can I send you it up? Because it worked brilliant when I got it, and then I thought I would make it better. You know, like you do. And like most people, I suppose he'd have watched all the tutorials that are out there. You know, the ones where it looks like first take, it worked first time and was absolutely perfect. And he'd had a bit fiddle and a bit clart and a bit fart and a bit carry on, like you do. And he didn't make it better. Made it worse. In fact, I think he made it not work. So he said, can I send you it up and can you have a blast at it and see if you can make it work and then send it back? And I said, yes, by all means. I'll certainly take a look at it and have a bit clart with it and see if I can make it work. And I suppose I'll have to send it back, either that or I'll have to send him some money. But that would be giving away the plot, and I don't want to do that. But, well, I'll not spoil the video. Have a look at this. It's 18 minutes out of your life you'll never get back, but I think you'll find it worth it. And here we are, in the usual place. And some vape mail has flooded in. I've been looking forward to this with a great deal of anticipation, shall we say. So let's look at what it is, shall we? And this is it. It's the Cobra, as you can see, beautifully boxed. Well, black and gold, always good. Sits in a nice little padded compartment. As you can see, titanium and stainless steel. Let's get it out and have a look. The top is a push fit top, but it looks beautifully put together. And as you can see, it just pulls off, and you'll see that there's a plethora of bits and bobs. I'm not going to pull it down, take it down and show you all around it. Scott Bonner, I Get You 69, has done the job. Comes with this T-bar hex wrench for those nuts that are sitting in the top. It's just lovely to look at, and it appears the fit and finish is absolutely brilliant. The tank slides on and off, probably needs to be pushed down a little further, but we'll see to that as we go on, just to get that seam at the bottom gone. You can see the two O-rings there forcing the seal. This has just come out of the box. It's as it's arrived, as it's come up from Daz at Safe e-cigs for me to have a look at. And yes, I'm really looking forward to having a play with this. I think it could be most interesting. Set up for dual coiling and U-wicking as well, as you will notice. But I'll not be looking at that today. Instead, I'm going to just wick it up and see where we go from there. So let's get on with that. Now my first step is going to be to gauge how big those holes are, because I don't want the wick to be too tight in the wick hole, the mesh hole, if you like. And it would appear that the hex key is going to be about the right size to use as a former in order to make the wick. The other thing I need to do is judge the depth, because what I want is for the wick not to touch the bottom, and I really don't want to have to trim it if I can avoid it. So we'll just measure to the top of the positive connector, and there it is. So the next step is going to be to get hold of some 500 mesh, number 500, and start making the wick, having measured up how long it needs to be. So let's get the mesh and the scissors and go from there. Right, that's the length I want it, just to that point. Scissors out, and I'm going to cut this to rather more than I usually would. This 500 mesh, 500 gauge mesh I've found, you need to use a little bit more of it. Perhaps I've been using too little of the other stuff, but it's going to go to about, and this is where he shows his is bringing us up. It's going to go to about 1.25 inches, 1.5 there or thereabouts. I'm doing my very best to cut this in a straight line. And there we have it. And since that's going to be on the inside, I don't mind if it's slightly at an angle. So we get shot of the mesh, and I'm going to use the hex key as the former for rolling this, rather than try to start it. It's too much like a cigarette paper for me, so I use these things as a former and just start rolling it round. Hold it on firmly, because I want that just to get a start, just to start curling, and then you'll see what happens after that. So that's it. And take the former out, and now just work it down. Bit like rolling a rollie, I suppose. Not that I could ever do that particularly well. And just get the whole thing snug down, because I know the diameter I want it to be to, and I do want it to have a hole up the centre. I do think that's quite important. So good and firm, as even as possible. Again, I think evenness is quite important, but one end I will leave slightly bugled. But you can see the hole down the centre, so that should be fine. And there's a good quantity of the mesh round that circumference, if you like. So we'll just check it for size in the hole, and that slides in and out quite simply. There's a little bit of a gap that you can see around it, which is fine. I don't want it solid to it, and I've made it a little bit long. And now comes, after I've just tightened it down a little bit further, we'll be starting to do the oxidation process, and that's always going to be fun. Just check the length again, it'll be fine. Slightly too long, but there's no issue really with cutting them down. I had intended to try and do it so I didn't have to, but that's not there. So I'm just going to firm it up a little bit further and leave that top end a little bit wider, so that there's a bit more for the coils to fit against, and that's nice and easy in there. So when it's been heated and oxidized and gunked up and what have you, it should fit in quite nicely. So now it's time to get the heater out and give it some. Now at this point in time, I'm actually going to speak over what's going on, because you won't hear anything. But after being told off by Kat, I've decided this time I'm going to use my conical pliers. I'll put it on at the bugled end first. So this is the end that the coil is going to be at. So I'm just making it slightly wider. And now we'll start the heating process. And this, I think, I'm going to speed up. That's it, oxidization complete. Now I just need to check that I've got it the right size, that it hasn't expanded too much, that it's going to fit in the hole. And I also need to measure up and make sure that I've got the right length, because I don't want the bottom of the mesh wick to touch the metal at the bottom of the tank, so that there's no chance of any electrical contact if there's a bit that hasn't oxidized correctly at the bottom. And it might allow juice to pour down the center as well if you need a flood of juice to come in. So there you are, there's a little gap. And next we need to coil it. So here we go. Because I've used the hex key as a former for the mesh, I'm going to use it as a former for the coil, which ought to mean that the coil will sit very nicely on the mesh wick itself and not be too slack and not be too tight. So there we go, 6 turns, because I want this to come out at around about 2 ohms. So we slide it off there, and then extract the mesh from the Cobra itself and slide it through the coil, ready to fasten it on. Now this is a little bit fiddly, and you've got to kind of finagle it and finesse it up, because remember the top of the mesh is slightly bugled out so that the mesh itself is closer to the positive center contact that sticks up right the way through the whole of the Cobra. So it takes a little while to get this into position, but once it's in position it should make life a little bit easier. Now as I say, I'm going completely from scratch here, not played with the Cobra at all. I've literally had it in my hands, well, as long as it took to unbox it and show you it literally 5 minutes after it dropped through the door. So just snugging the coils up the length of the mesh. They might just be a tad on the tight side, but we're getting there slowly but surely. If you use a slightly wider former, obviously it will work easier. But this is a method I've been using quite successfully on the NGP mods, NGP Genesis type tanks, all three of them. So let's just try that for fit, putting it in the right hole this time. And that seems to be about right. Just shove the mesh down a little further, which means that the bottom turn of the wick is right against the platform, so it's getting negative really nicely. And then we'll just tighten that in onto the bolt, holding everything in place, pulling the wire around good and tight. Don't want it to dig in too far, but I don't want it to be too slack either, otherwise we'll get a hot spot on the bottom leg. I kind of want to keep it in contact with that bottom plate until it gets to the mesh, and then take the positive leg of the coil, if you like, and again, keeping it fairly taut, screw that down. Now my feeling is that this should measure out at about 2.3 ohms, there or thereabouts, because my intention is to use this on a power controlled or a variable wattage device or a variable voltage device, and I just want to make sure that I've got everything in the right place. So let's measure it. And my Pravari still being dead and me not having my meter to hand, I've decided I'll use the Z-Max. It's reasonably accurate. And let's just see what we're getting here. Go to the section that does the display to tell me what the resistance of the atomizer is, and yep, we have a reading. But before I go any further, a little bit of juice, otherwise I stand a good chance of burning the coil out. So let's see what we've got. And this is reading, let me see, 1.6, 1.5. A little more juice because it does put power in, and as you'll see, 1.5 ohms, as quick as that. 1.5 ohms, which is a lot less than I thought it was going to be, but nonetheless we appear to be there. So time to trim the wires, either by winding or by cutting. Snap your swine. There's that one off, and I think I'll use the scissors to trim this bottom leg off, just to make sure I get everything right. Not easy to do this on camera, I've only got about 4 inches of space. So there we go. Coils in, and I'll just trim the wick to the top of the positive connection, like so. And then the only other thing I need to do is to make sure that my little hole at the top is a hole at the top, and we'll go from there. So little wooden toothpick, and it comes. It's so useful, these things, for moving coils about the place and making sure that your wick and everything is as you want it, because it's non-metallic, softer than the metal, so it shouldn't hopefully cause any damage. And there we go, a little bit more juice on the wick, and let's see what it looks like when it fires. And there we go, we have firing. This is good. And look, oh, there's a hot spot at the top. More juice, a lot more juice, and another hot spot. Just keep flooding it. Woo, flames. Did you see that? Flames. That's how hot that hot spot was. So now it's fiddling time, trying to get all of these coils and everything sorted out. I'm going to go so far as to say that this is definitely not for beginners. Still got that hot spot, look. That's right at the very top. And that seems to have sorted it. We've got it pretty much right. So now all that remains is to fill it with juice. And that, because of the size of the hole, is dead easy with a snipe nose bottle. You can literally just start squeezing it in. I'll try and get this in a better position so that you can see, although showing people how to fill a tank, never mind. Let's give it a go. First making sure that I've got that pushed right down. That's it, snugged into position now. It's just me being slightly anal. I want it right flush to the bottom, although it is perfectly sealed. Right, and in with the juice. In we go. Now one thing I have noticed, once you get above about 3/4 full in the tank, with any of these, it will start and bubble up the wick, which is possibly not a bad thing. It'll make sure it's properly primed at any rate. So I'll just tip it over, and there you can see it bubbling up the centre of the wick, look. So that's it, full, and I think we're probably ready to go. Now the only other thing to remember is to line the hole up with the wick, because apparently that's how it's supposed to be. Give it a good squeeze. Everything has snugged up absolutely perfectly. So here we have it. I shall screw it onto my device. I shall insert a drip tip, and I have here a Siam Mods drip tip, seeing as how it's a Siam Mods piece of kit, the Cobra. A nice conical one. Press that into place and get a nice sizzle. No, I'm not. And for some reason we're now down to 0.9 ohms. So something's moved. Well, isn't that interesting? It was working fine, and now it's not. That's it. Whoa. And now I'm dropping in ohmage. And I have a hot spot at the top. And it's dropped it. You'll be able to see that hot spot coming up, and that's hot enough to actually light the and I'm now showing 9.9 ohms. Because the coil that is producing wondrously. The flavour's marvellous. The throat hit is intense. It's now just coming up to 1 o'clock. I've had 3 hours sleep, so my head isn't working at all properly. I'm going to keep on using that, and I'll talk to you more about it live in the show, which will be around about now. Back to me.
The Haze Hour is brought to you by Janty, pioneers in electronic smoking. And now back to the Haze Hour, sponsored by Janty.
See, that's what happens when you let a numpty loose with a piece of technological kit. Actually, it's just as well all the lights are that side and not behind us, otherwise you wouldn't be able to see a thing. It's like a smoky shaft in here. I have been using this almost exclusively since I shot that video earlier on, and trust me, when it burst into flames, it was very nearly, I think they call it a brown trouser moment in polite circles. I'm not going to say I nearly had an accident. Yes, and I should also point out, for those of you watching after the event, the chat that I keep saying is the best chat in the world has done it yet again and distracted me, and they're now talking about the nose hit thing again, and like a fool, like an idiot, I read that, I tried it, and my eyes are watering slightly. Off the Cobra. I'm here to tell you that it's now settled down. I'm running it at e-cigs. It's 1.4 ohms, that coil, and I'm running it at 3.4 volts, and it is performing like an absolute champ.
But isn't this what we've been talking about and what I've been trying to say in that video I did? People keep putting out videos and tutorials, and they show, you know, the whole thing from start to finish, and it all works perfectly. Everything works. No hotspots, no nothing, no bursting into flames.
You can't say that about that video.
Well, I've lost track how many times I've seen them burst into flames. I just find it quite hilarious now. Because this is the learning curve. This is the practice. And it doesn't matter how damn good you are. You get a new bit of kit. And because something is slightly different, here you go again. the learning. Look at what happened to me. I ran out of 0.2 Canthal and now it worked.
Well, exactly. I mean, the Cobra is brand new to me. I've got to say, based on experience thus far, I do rate it. It is so nicely built. It is so nicely put together. But like any of these that I've played with, particularly the ones with the metal top, the metal plinth, what do you call it? The platform that everything rests on. That, I think, is my problem. That's my bit noir. That's the bit that trips me up every time. And I think it's down to how well you can oxidise the wick. I'm going to make a request of everybody now. I'm going to put some people on the spot. I'm not going to name them. But there's a fair few folks that have been chiming in with advice. And it's good advice. I have no doubt of that. But these are the blokes and ladies that know what they're talking about. And I want to make a request. It's a plea for help. I am a numpty, self-confessed. I'm playing with these things and trying to get used to them. I've had moderate success. I can manage the likes of the Odysseus and the Penelope and that sort of thing all day long. It's not an issue, no bother at all. These mesh wick Genesis style Atties are somewhat new to me. And I would love, for instance, put with the U wick that needs to be cut on the diagonal and not quenched and needs to be floppy for your Hellfire and all that kind of thing. Do us a favour, video how you do it, show us how to do it. And if there are some cock-ups and mess-ups, leave them in. Because I think there's a lot of people, what Kat says is right, there's a lot of people think it's just a case of wee, doink, and it's done. And patently, that's not the case. You do need a level of expertise, and I would really, really like to use the expertise of the people that know what they're talking about. So if you're good at it, can I ask you please, 10 minutes, no more, that's all it needs. You know, I mean, you can deliver it as long as you like, and I'll edit it down into 10 minutes. But if you know you can do this and you can show people a good, reliable way, please send it in to us and we'll play it in. Because I tell you what, when you get these things right, whether it's the Cobra, whether it's the NGP, whether it's the Line or any of the rest, when you get it right, my God, it's gorgeous. You've got everything going for you. Kat's a flavour hound, and you get loads of flavour, don't you, Chris?
Oh, good God, yeah. You know, when I've heard people in the past talk about chewing the vapour.
Yes.
And that's exactly what you can do. You can chew it and you can almost feel it like a solid thing, you know, being taken down into your body. It's absolutely wonderful. And it's worth the faff.
And there's throat hit galore if you want it. Mm-hmm. And there's vapour galore if you want it. You can tune these things to do anything. And if there are people out there that know the secrets now, without me, I mean, I don't mind going through and finding all this stuff out. But if you know the secrets, please put it on video and give it to us to play out so everybody else can share in your expertise. I'm not asking you how to make the device itself, just the coil and the wick. We need your hints and tips. Everybody needs your hints and tips. There you go. I very rarely beg, but I'm begging you now. I wouldn't dare do it if Keith was here. He'd have me guts for garters, he would.
Well, I find it's a learning curve all the time. For example, while I was watching that video, I thought, right, I'm going to have a go at changing a wick I've got here. I took out an old wick.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, I'm going to actually iron that out. I know that sounds a bit daft, but I'm actually going to take an iron and I'm going to flatten it out again. And it's an old one I've had because I never throw them away. And I'm going to flatten it out again and try it again. And then I thought, hang on, I'll just, you know, when you were saying about using the method where you use a drill.
Yes.
Well, I've had a go at that, and that's a very good tip, that one. But I took the Hellfire here that had a wick put on it, and I thought, right, I should be able to pull the old wick out because it's only been fired up a few times.
No.
So something happens when you're firing that, you know, the coil repeatedly. Something happens once the wick starts to actually absorb juice and the heat comes through that coil. that contracts that actual coil,
Right.
so that you can't pull the wick out anymore.
Oh yeah.
And this is what I mean. It's a learning curve for everybody, and everything there's a rhyme and reason for.
There's loads of science involved. That's what thrills me. Chris, I want to move on very quickly, and I might just run over a minute or two, but I think you'll forgive me.
I will, because I've been blethering.
No, it's okay. I just wanted to bring to everybody's attention something that got fired at me yesterday. This happened on the 24th of October. The Advertising Standards Authority has actually upheld 4 complaints against a company called Clear Smoke, the smart smoker's choice. A whole load of blurb there. If you go to the ASA website, you'll be able to find it very easily. But just to kind of go through the claim, they'd claimed that the product had been advertised by the BBC, Sky News and ITV, and that claim was misleading and could not be substantiated. The claim you can enjoy them safely anywhere you want was misleading and could be substantiated because he understood that was not the case. Quotations under the heading electronic cigarettes in the media were misleading because the complainant believed they'd been taken out of context, and the heading quality assurance in the text all Clear Smoke products are subjected to strict quality control and industry assessment, followed by the CE, ROHS and SJS logos were misleading because the complainant believed they suggested the product had been medically approved. And there's the whole load of what Clear Smoke came back and said in answer to it all. And, you know, it's the kind of thing we would all say, I suppose. But all of the 4 complaints were upheld. Whether the claim referred to Clear Smoke brand or e-cigarettes generally, Desert Point had not explained the context in which the product was claimed to have been advertised or featured on the BBC, Sky News and ITV1, and had not supplied evidence to substantiate the claim. So the claim was misleading. Advice, and this is the bit that really rankles me, advice published on the nhs.uk acknowledged that e-cigarettes had increased in popularity but was cautious with regard to the health risks associated with using them. It stated that the vapour was potentially less harmful than tobacco smoke, and so on and so on and so forth. And they also looked to Ash, who also had cautiously worded advice, so they upheld that claim. They also considered that the wording of the quotations had been selected that went beyond simple factual statements about how e-cigarettes functioned, and instead suggested that the authors or organisations were strongly in favour of the use of e-cigarettes as an alternative to smoking conventional cigarettes. And again, upheld right the way through everything. The site breached the advertising standards code, the CAP code, edition 12 rules 3.1, misleading advertising, substantiating and endorsements and testimonials. I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention. There are some rogue sites out there that are claiming things that aren't true, and I can tell you, this is for an absolute certain fact, that the Advertising Standards Authority went after Clear Smoke on the basis of 1 complaint. Just so you know, things are beginning to heat up. It's worthwhile bearing that in mind. Chris, am I going to go over time? She's not speaking to us. I've gone over time.
You haven't. It's not a lot.
Righty-ho, I'd better play the credits in and say me thank yous. I'd like to say thank you to everybody for joining us live tonight, and everybody that will be watching us after the fact on the podcasts, on YouTube, on Blip, on wherever it is you watch us. Chris, thank you so much for joining me in audio tonight. It's been a long time since we've done this, and it was fun.
You're very welcome.
And
anytime.
Thanks for the video. Tune in on Sunday for Dave Kitson. He will be here. I might even be with him. Oh, that'll put people off watching. Until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
The Haze Hour was sponsored by Janty, pioneers in electronic cigarettes.